Happy Star Wars Day! Hello everyone, my name is Christiana and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I was trying to think of a video to do for May, and while I was searching around YouTube, I saw that some people had done a video on their application process, and I thought that was a pretty good idea. So I decided to do that. So let's get started. I would think the best place to start is before the applications even drop. What I think is really cool is that you can actually fill out part of your application before the applications even drop. When you make your profile through the website that Disney usually has you apply for the Disney College Program on, you're able to fill out certain parts of the profile. For example, you can fill out like your name and address, you can fill out your education history and your work history. So that way, if you fill all that out, it's automatically going to be added onto your application. In regards to work experience, I definitely recommend filling out as much of it as possible. There are 5 available spaces for work experience. If you can fill all of them out, definitely do. It doesn't have to be all jobs that you were like paid for or anything either. It could be volunteer work. I personally added in a fundraiser from when I was in high school. Basically any job, any volunteer work, any fundraiser that you might have participated in. If you can put it in work experience, put it in work experience. There's also a few words that you might want to use when filling out the skills in your work experience. For example, 4 big ones are safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. Those 4 words are very big in Disney, very important to Disney. They are the 4 keys to success. So do use those when you are filling out the skills in your work experience. Something else that I also recommend that will help you in your application a bit, I'll include a link down below that lists all of the available roles for the Disney College Program. And if you click on any of those roles, it'll sort of tell you what is included with those roles, like what skills you need. So what I very strongly recommend is writing those roles down somewhere along with your interest level, which is what I did here. I was only interested in applying for Disneyland, so I only wrote down all of the Disneyland roles. And on this side over here, I wrote down my interest level for each role, which was either no interest, low interest, medium interest, or high interest. I would also like to remind you that if you put any sort of interest in a role, there is a chance that you're going to get it, even if you put low interest. The only way you're guaranteed to not get a certain role is if you put no interest, which is why I put no interest in things like costuming. I really like to have those interactions with guests, and costuming is more of a backstage role. So if I had gotten something like costuming, I wouldn't really be able to interact with any guests, which is something that I really like. I did, however, put high interest in attractions because that was my #1 role. It was something that I really wanted to do, and it's actually what I got accepted for. So I am actually very happy about that. Yeah, don't put any interest in something that you know for sure that you don't want. Don't put any interest in something that you don't think you'll really be happy in. And I think by filling all of this out before the applications drop, it sort of helps to speed up the actual applying part faster. Something else that I also did is I made a playlist full of encouraging Disney songs. It is called my DCP encouragement playlist. Every semester I've applied for, I've always made sure to share it with others who might also want to use it. I've made it collaborative so anybody else can add their own favorite encouraging Disney songs, and I'll also make sure to include that down below. And then something else that I also did to sort of encourage myself before the applications even dropped was I filled this whole page full of some of my favorite encouraging Disney quotes. Of course, the biggest one here is by Walt Disney himself. It says, "All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them." I really love that quote a lot. And then of course, once applications drop, the only real advice that I have is to take your time reading through everything. Make sure all of the information is correct. Make sure you've listed interest in all of the roles you want and no interest in all of the roles you don't. Just basically take your time, make sure the application is exactly how you want it to be. So eventually they might pull your application, and if they like what they see in it, they'll send you a web-based interview. It is also something that you sort of want to take your time with. You don't want to take too much time, however, because the questions are timed. But you know, just because the questions are timed, you don't want to like rush through them. I was personally always really nervous whenever I was taking my web-based interviews, so I liked to be able to call my grandmother or have my mom sit down with me to sort of just like keep me calm while I was taking the interview. If there was a word I didn't know, I would just ask them what the word means, and they usually knew. So I think that was really good for helping to sort of calm my nerves while I was taking the web-based interview. When you are taking the interview, you want your answers to be consistent. Disney does ask you the same questions multiple times, just worded differently, and I think that's just sort of there to try to trip you up, maybe catch you contradicting yourself. So you do want to watch out for that, and you do want to be consistent with your answers. And then the other thing is you want really strong answers. I don't mean this as in answer the way you think Disney wants you to answer. You want to usually only pick strongly disagree or strongly agree. And I think Disney just really likes those strong answers. You can go for a more neutral answer if you really need to, but for the most part, I do recommend mainly sticking with either strongly disagree or strongly agree. So once you do finish your web-based interview, if you do pass, they'll immediately move you on to the phone interview. The minute you answer that last question, it'll be like, let's schedule your phone interview. And you're just like, oh, okay. And so it'll take you to a page where you'll see this calendar. You click a certain date on the calendar, and next to the calendar will be a little box with all of the available times where you can interview on that day. I normally like to try to interview early in the morning. I think part of it is just so I'm not stressing about it the entire day. But usually when I did have an interview, I usually like to have it early in the morning. So once you do schedule your phone interview, there are a few recommendations that I have for you to keep in mind. So one of the things that I would mainly recommend is to practice for your phone interview. This is something else that I will also link down below, but if you look online, you can usually find some of the questions that they might ask you during your phone interview. So what I usually did is I would send those questions to my mother or my grandmother, and I would say, hey, can you call me in like a few minutes or something and ask me some of these questions? So that way I can feel a bit more prepared for my phone interview. Usually they were more than happy to do it. You don't want to practice every single day, but usually maybe like 2-3 times at most leading up to your phone interview is usually enough, I think. And something else that you want to do while you are practicing for your phone interview is you want to take notes. Now I did apply for spring 2020 and fall 2020. Obviously fall 2020 is the one I got accepted for, but I did get to the phone interview step on both of them. And I think part of the reason I failed is because of my notes, and I'll show you why. What I recommend is only trying to have like maybe 1 page of notes. You don't want it to be full sentences, maybe just a couple of words to sort of help you guide you along with certain questions. When I applied for spring 2020 and got to the phone interview, these were my notes. Obviously, this is not about 1 page. I did end up writing sort of full sentences. Basically wrote down my answers to every single question, not just the questions I were struggling with. I wrote down the answers to every question, not just the questions that I was struggling with. I think that was something that really hurt me in my phone interview. It made me sound scripted. It didn't really sound like anything I was saying was coming from the heart, which is something that Disney really likes. So when I did my phone interview for fall 2020, I took considerably not as many notes, especially compared to springs. All I really put in my fall interview notes was a reminder to smile, because Disney actually does like it when you smile during your phone interview. I put the 4 keys to success, my top roles. Over here, I put my interviewer's name because I do like to thank my interviewers by name at the end of the interview, which is another thing I recommend actually. Down here, I put some questions that I might want to ask for my interviewer. And then these words over here are basically just a couple of quick words to help me answer questions that I had struggled on. They're not full sentences this time. They were just a couple of quick words to help sort of guide me forward in my answer. On the day of your phone interview, I recommend setting up a quiet little space for you to take your phone interview. It has to be quiet so you can hear the phone interviewer and the phone interviewer can hear you. Some things that I personally like to include in my phone interview space is a mirror, so that way I could look at it and remember, hey, I need to smile. My notes, of course, with some sort of picture that reminded me of a happy memory, so that way when I did smile, the smile felt and sounded more genuine. I also sort of like to have a stuffed animal on my lap, so that way if I got nervous, I could squeeze it and pretend it was a stress doll, basically. And that was pretty much what I had in my phone interview space. You don't need all of these items. The main things I just recommend is having the notes, really. And then if you want to add like a stuffed animal or some sort of photo that makes you happy or anything, you're more than welcome to have that, of course. And then the very last thing I would recommend in regards to the phone interview is to ask your interviewer questions at the end of it. At the end of the interviewer, they'll usually say something along the lines of, "Oh, do you have any questions for me?" I remember on my first phone interview, one of the questions that I asked was how they got started working for Disney, and my interviewer actually really liked that question then. Her name is Margie. Hi, Margie. For my last phone interview, I asked my interviewer 2 questions. The first one being, if I somehow got attractions as a role, would I be able to request Mission Breakout as a location? Because Mission Breakout is my favorite ride. The interviewer said, yeah, you know, it's not a guarantee, but we will sort of try our best and see if there is space available. And I was like, okay, cool, I can take that. Because I knew it's not ever a guarantee that you get the location you want, but I figure if I can put it out there, I should. The other question that I asked my phone interviewer was something that she actually really liked, and it was something she was really helpful with. So a little bit of background, at least in Walt Disney World, about 6 weeks before your program ends, they will usually send you an email with a link that leads you to a website called the Transfer Genie. Basically, that's for if you ever want to continue working at Disney World after your program ends. It's sort of where you can say what roles and locations you want, and they usually try to get that for you. So I had asked Tina if there was something like that for Disneyland, and Tina was like, oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Let me find that out for you. And she was actually very quick in figuring out the answer for me, and I really do appreciate Tina for that. Tina, if you happen to be watching, thank you so much. You're awesome. By the way, the answer was yes, Disneyland does have something like that. Thank goodness. So of course, once your phone interview ends, it's just playing the waiting game again. I will say the hardest part of the application was always the waiting game, whether you were waiting for your web-based interview or you're waiting to hear whether you got accepted or not. The waiting game is just the worst part. But something that I would really like to stress is as long as you don't get that no longer in consideration email, you are still in the running. Everybody's application moves differently. I can tell you that the first time I got accepted, I waited 3 months for my web-based interview, and I can tell you it was torture. I would constantly like freak out over it, constantly cry, think that I was going to get my rejection email like tomorrow. It was very stressful, but eventually I did get that web-based interview and I did get accepted. I also knew somebody else who the moment they applied, they immediately got their web-based interview, and then they immediately got their phone interview. And after taking their phone interview, they waited like 2 months before they heard that they got accepted. And that's okay too. Everybody's application process moves differently, and that's okay. It really is. Just keep in mind that no matter the pace that your application moves, it's okay. As long as you have not gotten that no longer in consideration email, you are still being considered. And I think with that, I am going to end the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like and a comment so that way I know what videos you guys would like in the future. Make sure to subscribe to me so you can follow me on all of my Disney adventures. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram handle is right here. And as always, have a magical day, and may the 4th be with you.